Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to League Unlocked. My name's Eric. Thanks for joining us as always. We are alone on the Millennium Falcon today, flying Han Solo, and today we're looking ahead to the final weekend of action, of regular season action at least, in the LEC out in Europe in what has been a pretty amazing debut split for this entirely new league, first year of franchising in Europe. It's been very exciting, and just like last year, the very last couple of days will be absolutely insane for playoff implications because the only thing that's set in stone is going to be G2 finishing in first place. And outside of that, pretty much everything is still up for grabs. And before we actually get into all the playoff implications, the playoff bracket itself has changed heading into 2019. So let's go over how it's changed a little bit. You still have the top two teams getting a bye going right into round two. But this year, that third seed is even more important because you can pick between the fifth and sixth squad, which we'll get to in a bit, will be very important this year. So you play that first round best of, and the winning teams advance. And then this is where it changes again. You have team 1 and number 2, the top two seeds, play against each other, and the winner has a bye right to the finals after just one best-of-5 win. And then the losing team of those top two seeds will play the winners of that other second round, so they have a shot at redemption. So if you finish top two and lose a best-of series, you still have a chance at redemption to get back into that grand final. So there's a little bit of potential for a redemption arc for some of these squads, and just proves how important those top two seeds are because you are able to drop a best-of-5 series. So much to play for here in the final weekend. But obviously first, these teams actually have to make playoffs, and the 4 teams have already clinched. You've got Vitality, Origin, Splice, and obviously G2. There are still two spots up for grabs, and 4 teams that could potentially lock those ones up, and with varying degrees of possibilities. Obviously, the very best chances at 93.6 or something like that is FNATIC, which is probably not something many people would have thought 3 weeks ago, but at 9-7, they have the best record of all the teams vying for those final 2 spots. Basically, you win 1 game and you're in for FNATIC. 10 is the magic number. There are some crazy scenarios where they don't actually qualify, but for that to happen, first off, they have to go 0-2. Then they need some other teams to win as well. The only way they don't make it is if they finish in a tie for 6th with SK Gaming at 9-9, which means they'd have to go 2-0 as well because SK holds that coveted tiebreaker head-to-head of 2-0, which is really 3-0, as we know. So don't tie with SK, and you're good for FNATIC. They do play Splice and G2, which are a couple of tough matchups, but the way FNATIC has been playing, definitely expect them to win at least one of those, especially because it does look like G2 will be subbing in Promiscu for the final 2 games in the regular season. The next team with the best chances are actually SCHALKE, and that's because of that incredibly important head-to-head that they had against Misfits this past weekend that they did come away with. So they have one more win than SK and Misfits. Again, if they go 2-0, they're clinching playoffs, but I don't have any faith in this team going 2-0. Lucky for them, they do have a matchup against Rogue. I can't see them beating Origin, but they should still be good enough to beat Rogue, which would put them at 9-9, which has the potential for some tiebreakers. If SK does end up going 2-0, then they'll be playing a tiebreaker against each other. And if Misfits go 2-0, it doesn't matter because they hold the tiebreaker 2-0 advantage to them. So if SCHALKE goes 2-0 or even wins 1 game, Misfits are kaputs. They're out of the playoff running. So they need a pretty insane miracle for them to qualify. SCHALKE, really, they need to win 2 games, whether it's going 2-0 or going 1-1 and then getting a win against SK. But in a tiebreaker right now, I would probably favor SK Gaming based on how SCHALKE has played over the last, 4 weeks basically. So still not a ton of faith for SCHALKE, but it's very much in their own control. And when you look at SK, it's a team that at times definitely looked like a playoff squad. Obviously, Selfmade has had an incredible debut split in the LEC, and their matchups this weekend, they basically have to go 2-0 unless, again, SCHALKE goes 0-2, Misfits go 0-2 because they do not have that head-to-head against Misfits. So if they finish in a tie with them, if Misfits go 2-0, SK are pretty much short out of luck. So they need to go 2-0, and obviously Rogue, that should be a gimme for them. So it's all going to come down to the final day of the regular season. They need to get that win against Vitality, which it's not like Vitality is going to be mailing it in. They are very much playing for that second seed. So SK, that is the tough matchup for them to go against them. Maybe they could do it, but it seems like a tough go for SK to clinch those playoff, or one of the final playoff spots. And we kind of talked about Misfits. They need SCHALKE to go 0-2. They need SK to not go 0-2. And it's a hard road for Misfits to get there because they have to go 2-0 themselves to start things off against G2 and Splyce. And right away, I don't see that happening. And they need SCHALKE to lose a game to Rogue. There's a lot of things that have to go right for Misfits, so it looks like a flashback to 2018 spring where they missed playoffs yet again. FNATIC and SCHALKE are definitely the front runners to make playoffs, but I think it actually ends up being FNATIC and SK because I have zero faith in SCHALKE right now. I have more in SK, and I think that would be your 6 best teams going forward. But by the way, finishing third, huge implications because you get to pick who to play in that first round out of the 5 or 6 seed, which right now looks like you could be choosing between playing FNATIC or SCHALKE or SK. So having that decision will be pretty huge. So these teams with 10 wins that are playing for third or second, just huge implications. And second place is also even bigger because you have that bye, and the team right now that should be the front runner for it is Vitality for a couple of reasons. The first being, obviously, they're one of 3 10-6 teams, but they have probably the easiest schedule remaining of those 10-6 squads against Excel and SK, whereas Origin play SCHALKE and XL, which is actually quite comparable. So OG and Vitality both have pretty easy schedules on the docket, but Vitality does have that coveted 2-0 head-to-head against Splyce. So if there is a 3-way tie, if Origin, Splyce, and Vitality all go 2-0, for example, Vitality would finish second because of that favorable head-to-head against Splyce. Origin third, and Splyce would be knocked down to fourth. But if they go 2-0 for Vitality, at worst, you're playing in a tiebreaker or locking it up. So 2-0, you're in good running to finish second for Vitality, and you want to avoid finishing in that third place for these guys. And the important matches to watch, really the most important ones, there are obviously going to be a ton of things on the line this weekend, but the biggest ones, Origin versus SCHALKE, because SCHALKE playing for their playoff lives, and I just talked about Origin. You want to finish 2 or 3. You don't want to finish 4th for these teams that have already clinched. And then you have SK versus Vitality, which is, I mean, similar things in that regard, and Splyce versus FNATIC. FNATIC does have a tough weekend, as I've already said, G2 and Splyce, but they do have the potential to finish top 3, maybe even second for them. And if FNATIC finish top 3 and are able to finish or pick their opponents in the opening round, that would be an incredible turnaround for them as an organization based on what we saw earlier in the spring split. But 4th place, you want to finish top 3 because 4th, you can't pick who you're going up against, which means assuming FNATIC doesn't finish top 3, you are more than likely going against FNATIC. But there's a pretty decent chance that we're going to have at least one tiebreaker, maybe a tiebreaker for second place and for that final playoff spot. But FNATIC seem pretty close to locks to at least make playoffs, and they could climb as high as second, but a lot of things would have to go their way. So expect them to finish in that 4 to 5 spot, and second place is very much up for grabs. It seems like Origin have kind of turned it on the second half, so maybe they're favorites to actually finish second, but Splyce did just take down G2. It all depends how good this G2 roster looks with Promiscu in the lineup, because they have some big matchups against Misfits and FNATIC this weekend, so they can either crush Misfits' hopes and dreams, and maybe even FNATIC's, or it's just an easier win for these two squads because before, or at times throughout spring, G2 has looked absolutely untouchable, but not as of late in the LEC. But however it plays out, there are going to be some crazy scenarios, and there's going to be a whole lot of percentages changing from every single game, because almost every single game this weekend are going to have huge, and I mean huge, playoff implications. The LEC, or the EU LCS, never disappoints when it comes to playoff clinching on the last 2 days of the regular season. So make sure you're watching Week 9 of the LEC, because it's sure to be a true barn burner.